This video looks at other reasons to vertically integrate. So what are some of those other reasons to vertically integrate? First, and most important, is the possibility of vertical market failure. When the market is too risky, the market is too unreliable. Also, when we have companies that are in adjacent stages of our industry chain and they have more market power than our company does? Or could we create more power by doing what? Raising barriers to entry because we have purchased another firm or acquired another firm in a preceding stage or a subsequent stage of production. Also, if the market is young and the firm needs or will be able to forward integrate and develop that market, so forward vertically integrate, or if the market is declining and independents are pulling out of that market. However, the most important reason to vertically integrate is when you have vertical market failure. And what are some of those examples of vertical market failure? When you have few buyers and sellers, when you have high asset specificity, or you have frequent transactions. So when we think of having our few buyers and sellers, there's just not a lot of players in the market. And our high asset specificity, the three types are site, technical, and human capital. What does that mean? So when we think of site specificity, we can think of the primary and secondary. So the extraction business, and the secondary stage of production would be the manufacturing process. And so we can think of mergers of mining companies, of oil and gas companies, of other steel companies, for example, where they locate their manufacturing facilities next to the actual bodies of ore, for example, or the petroleum, for example, so that your transportation charges are not high, and as well you can tighten that value chain. So that is site specificity. When we think of technical specificity, we think of investing in specialized equipment that can only be used by both parties and have a very low use for others. And so because of that, a lot of times, if it is very technical, companies don't want to do it. They're not sure. And so if you had acquired that other company, then you would be able, again, to have that economy of scale and as well to invest in that very specialized equipment. That specialized capability is not only technical, it is also human. So we think of human capital specificity. We think of employees that are developing skills that are particular to a particular buyer, be that a company or particular to a particular industry, when you are in a niche market, for example. So those skills. As well, when you have frequent transactions, so that when your cost to actually transact is very high, relatively speaking to the number of transactions that you would have to continually enter into your contracts, for example, and monitoring those contracts, and did they get completed the way that they should have done. So when there are frequent transactions and those transaction costs are high. So those are features of vertical market failure. However, before vertically integrating, the firm should do what? They should look at other arrangements, those other arrangements being strategic alliances or any other alternatives. And what is the reason for that? It's because the other arrangements do provide more flexibility. If you have bought another company, then what happens? Your money may be tied up. You have embarked upon a particular path, and it is hard to pivot from that path. So there may be other arrangements that are better. And as well, you might think, is there sufficient demand for me to vertically integrate? Will I be able to keep up the other parts of the process, the manufacturing, for example, the secondary or the extraction? Will we be able to keep those up so that our flow of goods coming from stage to stage to stage, that is maintained? And will we be able to maintain those skills? So what are some examples there of other alternatives to vertical integration? We've got long-term contracts, relational contracts, franchises, and joint ventures. And so when we think of our long-term contracts, what did those do? They give security to both firms. So you've got your contract, and it helps the other firm to know how to set their production schedule, for example. So it does give them security. They know whom they're going to sell to at what price. And so that relative transaction price now is much lower for both companies. You've not bought the other company, but your transaction costs are very low. When you have relational contracts, what are those? Those relational contracts help to create a flexible framework for companies to collaborate together. They may be written documents, they might not be. They might be a more informal understanding between the CEOs and the C-suites of the different companies. And they help to add to mutual understanding and mutually beneficial incentives between the two companies. However, you do have to be very careful about who is making those implied contracts. We can have as well what our franchises, so which the agreements between the owner of a business system or a brand and allowing someone else to use that business system, to use that brand for a fee. As well, we can have a joint venture when two firms invest in a business and actually create a third firm. So there are other alternatives to vertical integration that do provide for greater flexibility. One of the things that we see is what is our key to a successful vertical relationship. And that key is very simple. It is the promise of a long-term, mutually beneficial relationship that is more valuable than any short-term gains that you can get from a spot or a market transaction. So that what are the components there? Long-term being one, so it provides continuity. It provides security over that continued time. It is mutually beneficial, so both companies are profiting from that particular arrangement, shall we say, and that arrangement is valuable. That arrangement will sustain its value because it is allowing both firms to save money basically on the transaction and to have that security.